Hi, this is Christopher Kimball from Milk Street Radio. I often shop at Whole Foods Market since they sell the kind of food I like. Organic vegetables, a great meat counter, and of course a great staff. For Thanksgiving, Whole Foods offers brine turkeys, as well as a spiral cut bone-in ham. The Whole Foods Market Bakery has a large assortment of pies, even a vegan pumpkin pie, or grab some brioche and butterflake rolls for the table as well. Or you can ask the Whole Foods team to cater your meal for you, including the bird, the sides, and desserts. Get your holiday party started at Whole Foods Market.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we talk about those films we think deserve a little bit more love. Whether they're underrated or underseen, we're going to talk about them. So, let's see what it's going to be this week. Hello, yes, welcome back to another episode of Just Films and That. I'm Josh Hallam, and I'm joined as ever by my wonderful co-host, Jamie Allerton. Jamie, how you doing? You okay?
Good. How are you, Josh?
I'm all right, mate. We're going to talk about a film?
Yeah, we're going to sneakily talk about a film.
Which might give a hint as to what we're going to talk about. It's Ocean's 11. We're going to talk about Ocean's 11. No. So yes, we're going to be talking about Sneakers this week from 1992. So spoiler warnings if you've not seen it. Before we get into that, if you could head on over to whatever you're listening to this on, give us a little 5-star rating and review, then that would mean the world to us because it means other people see it and other people hear the podcast. And it's just nice to hear your feedback, even if it's bad feedback. 5-star review with bad feedback, that's absolutely fine, which is better than a 1-star review with good feedback. We'd rather the other way around. Also, if you listen to this sterling broadcasting and you're thinking that you'd fancy some bonus content, then we're on Patreon. So click the link in the episode description where you can get ad-free extended episodes with early access to them for £1 a month. We've got lots going on, Jamie. Throwback Thursday episodes, bonus episodes of new releases and normal episodes, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, Sneakers then from 1992. Spoiler warnings for a 30-odd-year-old film, but Jamie, you picked this one. So what's it about and why did you pick it?
Okay, so Martin Bishop, a.k.a. Bryce, is a wanted fugitive who set up a team of experts whose jobs are break into organizations to show them their own weaknesses. But when the NSA comes knocking with a mission, they may be over their heads in 1992's Sneakers, which I loved. I watched this film when it first came out. This was like a rent from the VHS, the video store. And I've always loved the tone of this. Is like whenever people talk about this, it's just a really fun movie that feels like if you wrote the plot down, this would be a very serious thriller. You've got like people running down alleyways being like, trust nobody, da-da-da. And even the music like kind of riffs on that. But the script of this makes it actually really fun and really funny. And like it's almost a comedy, like it leans towards that, which I don't think any other film has kind of met that, like the fun espionage. Maybe like you mentioned as Ocean's 11, but kind of it has that kind of fun aspect to it, even though this is a bit more serious.
Yeah, I would say it's not. Ocean's 11 does have that, but not to the degree of this. If you look at the balance of cool versus funny, this is funny and a bit cool. Ocean's 11 is more cool and a bit funny.
Yeah, I mean, this tells you from the off that we're going to play with some of the tropes, like when they run into the bank at the start. Robert Redford tries to jump over the counter and falls over. And then River Phoenix is cutting the wires then, like 20 seconds later, says, it's always the green wire, cuts it and all the lights go out. And like, okay, so we're playing with the tropes of heist movies and espionage movies now.
Yeah. But it's not a spoof, but it's a little wink and a nod in it. And like I say, it's a heist movie. Everyone's got their own skills, aren't they, Jamie? It's one of them. Everyone's got a skill. Everyone's got a motivation. Everyone's got a quirk.
But imagine you got an ensemble. Here's the other thing where it compares to Ocean's 11, I guess. The ensemble is insane. I've got Sidney Poitier, Mary McDonnell, Robert Redford, Ben Kingsley, Dan Aykroyd, James Earl Jones, David Strathairn, the ultimate that guy, Stephen Tobolowsky, River Phoenix, everyone. It's like, it's mad that this isn't a bigger film. That's why I've kind of brought it today, is because that cast is insane. When I was young, I was like, there's a Ghostbuster in it. So that's what excited me.
So is it underseen, is it underrated, or is it both?
I think it's slightly underrated, and it's not that it's underseen because this isn't a box office bomb, but I think it's one of those forgotten ones where
Lost to time sort of thing.
Yeah, it did well, but because it didn't turn into a franchise, and because it's not, these stars aren't kind of popular stars now, it's not been kept alive.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. That's one of the things I've got in my notes, which we'll come on to, which is in many ways this is quite a good study in time, because you've got a lot of people who were really, really famous when it came out, aren't famous anymore or have passed away. And then there's also things like there's thematic things, which are like, it's one of these films, it has aged, but not in a bad way. It just has aged. You can see the aging of the film, and in some ways it improves it. In some ways you go, oh, look at how silly that is, floppy disks or whatever. Okay, let's get stuck into talking about it then. So just to remind you guys at home, we get started with the likes, talk about what we like, and then we move on to the dislikes, and then we'll have a look at what we reckon in terms of the critical reception, whether it's underseen, whether it's underrated, whether it's both. So we'll get stuck into the likes then.
Well, have you seen this before, Josh?
No, I haven't seen it, and I hadn't even heard of it, I don't think. I looked at the poster, and I looked who was in it, I was like, I definitely haven't heard of it. Obviously, River Phoenix only made a handful of films, and I didn't know about this one. I knew about some of the others, but no, I hadn't heard of it. And I have to say, like, speaking generally, I had a bloody good time with this. I just thought it was so much fun. So much fun, lots to like. So getting into it then, it doesn't take itself seriously. So I like a film like this. It doesn't take itself seriously. I don't think they exist as much anymore. I think there's an element of they either are quite serious or they're a spoof. There is the odd film that comes along where you go, oh, it doesn't take itself too seriously. Like, I'd say the first one that comes to mind in recent memory would be something like Barbie. But that's very much almost without genre, or it's its own tone. The product is the genre sort of thing. Whereas this is going for something. It's a heist movie. It's an ensemble heist movie. And I think that the way they do it, like you say, like we sort of touched on, it doesn't take itself too seriously. And the real strength of this for me is not only how good the cast are, but how well they work together and the dynamics between the characters. Like, I think that they fit, I'm not saying they feel like real characters, but they feel like they are all really friends and that they are all really colleagues sort of thing.
They all have those interlinking relationships where, you know, Sidney Poitier is getting annoyed by Dan Aykroyd, and you can tell that that's something that's happened for years, where he's given us conspiracy theories. And, River Phoenix kind of supports Whistler, and you can kind of see that he normally, when he needs assistance, he's there for that. It doesn't overdo it, where it's like, you know, those ensemble teams where he's like, he's the best at that, and he's the best at that. But this is just like, this is the team that I need. And also they're all kind of degenerates, or they've all been in trouble as well.
Yeah, but they're likable rogues. So a lot of them have been on the wrong side of perhaps the law, but they're not horrible.
And it's nice to see, like, everyone in that ensemble having fun. Like, you can imagine years from now someone going, you need to watch Sidney Poitier movies, and being like, okay, there's going to be a lot of homework movies here. Or, you know, you need to watch Robert Redford movies and going, okay, well, we've got to dive deep into all these, like, very prestigious movies. Yeah. And then coming across this and being like, oh, wow, this is just really fun.
Yeah, and every now and then you do have to, it's almost like you have to be reminded, because we've only done one Robert Redford film on the pod, which was Butch Cassidy, which we did as a classic film. But you do remember, like, movie stars have been around for 100 years now. So you look back now, and the movie stars have come and gone, and you're going, well, you know, Orson Welles is famous for Citizen Kane and The Third Man, but in their career they have also gone, do you know what? I'm just going to do a little bit of a fun film. Like, there isn't really a movie star who hasn't done a film like this. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if there's one who. Obviously, I don't have an absolute encyclopedic knowledge, but the first one that came to mind was like, I just don't think Daniel Day-Lewis has done anything like this that isn't a prestigious piece. But everyone else you think of, they've even, like, you know, Orson Welles is in Transformers.
Yeah, Tom Cruise has done Tropic Thunder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, everyone has done that thing of like sending themselves up, or just going, you know what, I'm gonna do something a little bit different, one for me, one for them, sort of thing. So the cast are really, really great, and the dynamics between them are what makes it pop. Like, you look at the cast on paper. Like, if you compare it to something like Ocean's 11, the cast do work really, really well, but it's almost like it's less of an ensemble. Like, I love Ocean's 11. It's probably it's certainly in like my top films, that first Ocean's 11, largely for nostalgic reasons. But there is an element of it. A lot of it is Clooney and a lot of it is Pitt, and then they all have their own little moments to shine, but not like this. Whereas this, I suppose it's different because Ocean's 11, they put the team together, whereas this, they're a pre-existing team, and it does really pop. Those dynamics between them really, really pop. I think it's really fun. I think it's really funny as well. I laughed a few times, like things like, there's a bit where Redford's on the phone to one of them and he's trying to break through a secure door and they can't figure out this lock. And then you think, he goes, oh, I'm going to do that. Okay. And you think they figured it out. And then he just kicks the door down. And I was just chuckling to myself watching that. Or there's a bit where River Phoenix mentions something about having $50. And they go, where'd you get $50? And he goes, I took it out of, I think it's Dan Aykroyd's character's wallet or something like that. So I just thought it was really, really good. Good exercise in exposition as well. So they don't exposition dump. They sort of, you find stuff out about them as they go. There's a flashback at the beginning, and then you find stuff out about what's going on, what they're doing, and what their skills are, and who each of them are, and how they've met, and what they've done as it goes along. So I like films like this. You know, they trust you as an audience member to figure it out, but give you enough so that if you can't figure it out, you're not lost. Like I wasn't lost at any point in the film or anything like that. So yeah, and also just to finish for me on the likes, just a really, like I touched on it before, really good study in terms of like a moment in time. Like you could show this to someone now who didn't know about things like the technology of the early 90s, the fashion of the early 90s. I mean, might come back to that. There's certainly some haircuts and turtlenecks in this. And then things like post-Cold War paranoia, like they touch on that to a degree where you don't lose anything by not knowing anything about it. But obviously, having read about it through being interested in films and doing history at school and stuff like that, I did know about it and thought that added another layer of it for me. And then there's some good devices in there as well, like devices around, like, so for example, one of the characters is blind, and it does bring a really interesting layer of sort of engagement into it, because he does everything through Braille, and there's all these little bits of technology that use Braille that I'd never seen or never even thought about, like how does he use how does he use a keyboard, how does he use technology, that sort of thing. And I thought that was really interesting as well. So I thought there was loads to like in there for me. Really, really enjoyed it. I'd definitely watch it again as well. So what about you then? What do you like about it?
Yeah, I mean, adding to that cast, what's great about this is that they do that thing where they also add the bit players, like little side characters are just made up of really great, fun actors. Like the two NSA agents, one of them is, I think, the dad from Lois and Clark. And also, like, the script on this is great. Like, a bit that really made me laugh at the end when Whistler says, I want peace on earth and goodwill to all men. And James Earl Jones just very straight-faced says, we're the United States government, we don't do that sort of thing. Like, it's a really tight script, and that, yeah, top film.
So tell us a little bit more about the cast then, because like I said, it is a real moment in time type cast. So how did you feel about the cast?
What was mad is, like, I tried to think about if you did this today, and I can't imagine actors signing up to this, like, because they're no one's really challenged in it, and you can tell they're all having fun, but there is no like, this is your amazing moment or this is your amazing monologue. And it's easy, like, imagine Dan Aykroyd at this point. This is what got to be just coming up to Ghostbusters 2. He's a big actor in this. Yeah, you kind of forget that he's in it. You know, he has some great moments. River Phoenix was huge at this point, and it must have been that this script was going around and everyone was going, "This is so much fun. You need to get in on this." And I can't. You know, can you imagine The Rock doing this, but as a bit part now?
That's the thing now. Like, I'm trying to think that there is still ensemble stuff knocking around. You've got to look at, I suppose, like you've got like the Fast and Furious franchise and the Marvel films and all that sort of stuff. But I can't imagine them. I think because it's a one-off as well. Like if they did it now, you'd want it to be a first part of a 10-part, you know, film saga, and there was a running plot line through it. And I'm not just, you know, I know we've mentioned two franchises that do that there, but it's just, it would all be about synergy, wouldn't it? And like, you know, everything else that came with it. Whereas this is you can tell it's a one and done because of the whole, I mean, they could have made another one because it's just a case of, it's like, you know, like a Knives Out. They just move on to the next job or whatever.
I feel like this script feels like it was made with love. Like it must have taken years to write it and make it kind of, because also it's not, sometimes with these espionage films, halfway through I go, oh, hang on, who's doing what and who's what? this, considering how complex it could be, at no point was I confused. I was like, that's a machine, that does that. And because also they're visual storytellers in this as well. They tell you when Whistler's kind of working out what this code breaker is. Like, at the back of your mind, you're like, that seems very unlikely that just by putting a Phillips head screwdriver onto this box, it'll unlock, you'd be able to crash a plane. But also they do great moments of levity and then tension. So when he realizes what they can do, you have Sidney Poitier coming over and being like, turn that off right now. And he's saying no one can leave until we do the switch. So they know when to ratchet it up and go, right now, this is a tense moment. And then now we're back to having fun.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And I suppose the closest thing to it now would be something like Knives Out. But the other thing with this is, bearing in mind the comparisons to Knives Out, is there's no you pretty much know there's a midpoint twist, but you pretty much know who the good guys are, who the bad guys are to a degree, and that's it. There's no double cross, there's no triple cross, there's no who sides who on. Whereas, like you say, these days they would overcomplicate it massively and probably be dropping exposition, hints to future worlds and future building and stuff like that, or they just wouldn't. I don't think anywhere now does closure and satisfaction like they have done in the past. Whereas these days it's like, we can do, but sort of leave it open. I think, again, something like Barbie did that quite well, even though you knew in the back of your mind, if this makes loads of money, they'll make more. But they did create a closed world in that sense, didn't they, with that to a degree. But even this, it does feel very much like we did it, it was fun, and that was it.
Yeah, I guess the early 90s was pre-franchise. I mean, we had them, but you wouldn't give someone a budget, and like producers now will watch every scene and go, oh, maybe we can create a little backdoor for that. We can have, Dan Aykroyd off doing his side missions. On this is just like, the team's done it, and it even closes on, they get everything they want. Like, when I was young, I used to be so angry at River Phoenix being like, no, just ask for $1 million, But actually, it's such a sweet point, and they play that well as well, because it could be seen as like they're literally bartering over a woman, whereas they give her agency in that, and she steps forward and sees like the romantic side of, he could have had anything he wants, but he wants my phone number.
And it's more that it's quite cute. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's the closest you get, again, because you don't really get it anymore, to And Then They Lived Happily Ever After. Okay, so let's move on then to the dislike section, or things that would change about it, all that sort of stuff. Is there much? I sense for you a lot of affection for this film, so it's probably going to be quite hard for you to come up with anything that you'd change. And there are things that we've touched on that it's aged, but I didn't think the aging was particularly a negative. If anything, I found it quite interesting. What about you? Is there anything you would change about it?
So maybe this is like a sign of the times, but Cosmo's plan is actually good. He's talking about crashing all the financial records in the world. And you're like, yeah, do it. Especially, I guess in 2024, looking back, we're like, yeah, the bank's like, this is pre-2008 crash. This is no one can get a mortgage. The idea of someone coming in and destroying all the financial institutions, even if he's doing it for mobsters, you're like, yeah, go for it, Cosmo. They play him like the villain. They have a really good bit where he's talking over the microphone in the office, and it's like done as like he's pretty much a Bond villain. But he's entitled to be angry, because Martin did say, we won't get in trouble if we do this.
Yeah, and I quite like the fact that as the villain, he is the villain, but he's more complex than just being a cackling mwahaha, and he just it sort of ends with him just not getting what he wants. But he also, from what I remember, like, he doesn't go to prison. He doesn't.
No, I think the insinuation is that his mobster bosses are not happy with him, so they'll probably, because he went to jail and then befriended some people in the mob, and then he's like, there's this device where, as mobsters, do you want to crash planes? I guess, I don't know, but
yeah.
But you imagine things aren't going to go too well for him.
Yeah. And it is one of those things where the device, it does make sense, but it is a bit of a MacGuffin. It's more just they're stealing the thing to do the thing, and that's it. That's all you need to know. It doesn't really matter. Whereas again, nowadays they'd be like, you need at least 20 minutes on what this thing is. Yeah,
and I quite like that they even show like Martin goes to a speech by the mathematician, and he's like, no idea what's going on here, but does anybody else? Yeah, okay, that works.
Is there anything else that you don't like about it?
That's about it, because externally, I don't like that this hasn't passed on. Like you said, you had a lot of fun. What about you, dude? Was there anything that you didn't like?
I've got a sort of a bigger one and a couple of smaller ones. What do you want first?
I'll have one from the bottom.
I'll start with a little one because I will say this. I think Dan Aykroyd's hair in this might be the worst film hair. It's up there with Hawkeye and Endgame. It's bad. It's bad film hair. And I know it's meant to look a bit. He's meant to be a bit of a loon, isn't he? And he's like got greasy hair and he's got all these weird theories. But it doesn't suit him, Jamie. He looks like an absolute knob. Like
you're watching a good film when that is your nitpick.
Yeah. Other than that, I'll say I think the midpoint twist is a little predictable.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, especially when you see the all the adverts for this and the opening credits. Ben Kingsley, you're like, well, he's coming up, isn't he?
Yeah, it's like the person who did it's the most famous person in the credits.
Yeah, and they even have where he says, well, you were the only one who knew his backstory, Liz, and you're like,
Yeah, so I thought that was a little predictable. Again, I didn't really mind it because it was tongue-in-cheek. It's just something I noticed. There is a touch of the cliche in certain elements of the script, a bit like when we did Outbreak. This old idea of we don't need to be separated. Like him and Liz are just separated, and you're like, why? It's just they've obviously gone. We need an additional layer of conflict or whatever, and it just doesn't. It's just unnecessary because you just know they're going to get back together. The only other thing for me, and I will say this, is it probably could have had a stronger female presence. As films for the time go, it's not so bad, but I don't think it passed the Bechdel test because it's just the only strong female character in it is Liz, and all she does is serve the male characters.
Yeah, I think nowadays you've got Michelle Rodriguez on the team, haven't you?
Yeah.
Who's like the greatest hacker that we've ever seen.
Yeah, and this is the thing is there's no reason why other characters can't be female. Like literally any of them.
Yeah.
There's no reason for them to be blokes.
I can't remember what film it was, but I heard a quote from a Hollywood producer once where there was a female on the team, and they're like, but she's not getting with the main lead. So why is that part a female? And the director had to be like, because women can be in these films as well. But the producer was just nonplussed, like, yeah, but why?
Was that whole thing of like you said, female characters exist to be mothers and sex objects?
Well, you sent me your script, and certainly that's coming back.
They're just the characters in mine are just called mother and sex object. They don't have why give them names? What's the point?
That's the name of the film, isn't it?
Yeah, mothers and sex objects. It's a kids' film.
Selling it to Netflix.
Okay, so let's move on to talking about the critical reception then. So just to remind everyone, Jamie picked it mainly because it's underseen, but a little bit underrated as well. So let's do the ratings first. How do I think this did? I think this is a solid 7.5 out of 10. Really, really enjoyed it. But I think if it's only a little bit underrated and you really like it, I think perhaps maybe like a high 6, something like that. So that's what I'm going to say. Go on, lay it on me, and let's work out the average. So again, just to remind everyone, we get the Rotten Tomatoes critics and audience, we get the IMDb, and then we work out the average. Jamie, let's hear him.
So right, I think it's underrated just because I think this is a 9. Okay, this
right.
Is
okay. All right. Okay.
Because this is Rotten Tomatoes audience 80%, bang on 80%.
Okay.
Rotten Tomatoes critics, bang on 80%.
Okay.
IMDb 7.1.
Right. Okay. So that averages out at 77. I give you that. I give you that as appropriately rated. I know that you say underrated, but then how much of the heavy lifting is nostalgia doing on this for you?
Well, no. What I think is people are mistaking levity for quality, and that's what. Right. Whenever you hear like this is starting to be mentioned in a lot of kind of film essays now as like one of those lost 90s films, and I think the tone which is what makes it great worked against it from making it like you have to watch this film because this is an espionage classic,
Yeah, almost like, well, it doesn't take itself seriously, so why should you?
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? That sort of yeah, no, I get that. But then actually, if anything, with the way mainstream cinema has gone, time has been quite kind to it in that sense because it does have that quippy, no one takes anything seriously dialogue that things like the Marvel films have and stuff like that. What about the box office then?
So box office, 23 million budget.
Right. That's nothing, is it? I think I read it. There was an article this week, not to age when we record this, about Sydney Sweeney becoming one of the highest paid in Hollywood, and something to do with how much money she got for Madam Web, and how much she got. She did that to get Anyone But You made, and it was like Madam Web was made for 150 million quid and made 4p, and it was something like Anyone But You was made for 25 million quid and grossed 250 million quid, something like that. I mean, so you're looking at like. With that in mind, Anyone But You, which is a rom-com that saw quite a lot of success, was released in the last year, was made for 25 million quid, and this is a massive ensemble cast being made for the same amount 30 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think this must have been mainly for the cast, because, I mean, they probably picked up points on it, but because it was like an unknown IP as well, they must have gone, no, I want some money up front. But also, it's very script-based, isn't it? It's not.
Yeah.
There's no like big explosions. 23 million budget. How well do you think it did?
If it's underseen, but not. So you said it did quite well, but it's been sort of lost. I would say it probably did maybe like 100 million or something like that.
105 million. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So that like, proportionally speaking, that'd be quite a big hit now because everything costs $200 million. So.
If we pulled up a list of films from the early 90s that made $100 million, you'd probably know them quite well, and they'd been on, ITV or BBC quite a lot. Whereas this just doesn't seem to get a look in. No one references this.
No, you're right. You're right. So yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I'd never heard of it. That's why I think it is underseen, and I think it's aged really well in terms of the tone of it. Obviously, some of the stuff in it hasn't aged that well in terms of like technology, but I don't think that really, really matters. If anything, I quite enjoyed that. So I think it is underseen. And I think if you like a sort of Marvel quippy blockbuster or something like that, Fast and Furious, don't go in expecting loads and loads of action and big set pieces. But if you like that back and forth dynamic, tongue-in-cheek film, not taking itself too seriously, I think you probably would like this. I think there's definitely a place for it.
Yeah, I think the word kind of we started with was fun, and that's what it is. Oh, that was fun. So what are we watching for next week, Josh?
Next week, we're delving back into the world of animation and family films. We're talking about Disney's The Sword in the Stone. Join us next week when we're going to be talking about that. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social media, so if you search for Just Films and That on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok or YouTube, we're on there. We're always putting stuff out there, so do give us a follow, engage with us, and drop us a message if you've got any film suggestions. All that remains to be said is thank you very much for listening. Looking forward to seeing you next week. It's goodbye from me. Cheerio.
Bye.
You've been waiting all year, and the moment is finally here. Boll & Branch is the bedding brand for better sleep, and their best sale of the year is happening now. Right now, you can get 25% off the organic cotton sheets loved by millions of sleepers. They feel breathable, luxuriously soft, and get softer with every wash. Shop Boll & Branch's cyber event with extended returns for the holiday season. Hurry to bollandbranch.com and use code BUTTERY for 25% off everything. Limited time only. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
1-800-Flowers.com knows that a gift is never just a gift. A gift is an expression of everything you feel and helps to build more meaningful relationships. 1-800-Flowers takes the pressure off by helping you navigate life's important moments by making it simple to find the perfect gift. From flowers and cookies to cake and chocolate, 1-800-Flowers helps guide you in finding the right gift to say how you feel. To learn more, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.